Hi, Bex.
Hi Matt, how you doing?
I'm great. Good to see your face. And how's life in Los Angeles at the moment?
Yeah, it's good. We're tired, the same as probably most people. I think it's been, incredibly stressful over the last few months, but trying to kind of weather through, really.
Yeah, and you're a mum and you've got kids at home. What's the household like?
Crazy at times. I have two very small children that need new activities about every 7 minutes. And it's somewhat mixed because on one hand, it's really lovely to spend more time with them and to get to have lunch with them and see them. At the other time, it's actually difficult to concentrate and when they're screaming in the background. Um, and certainly at Netflix we're trying to figure out how do we support working parents, and I think initially, well, my opinion initially was, once the schools go back, things will get easier. And so we have to manage this for a couple of months over the sort of spring term. There'll be the summer holidays, and then the children will go back to school. In a lot of North America, that's not necessarily the case. So certainly here in LA, we are our restrictions are actually getting more strict, rather than easing. And so as public schools closed and then private schools were closed, we're trying to find ways in which we can help working parents and support them. And I don't think that that's easy, but it's certainly something that we need to look at because I think that this is going to go on for many, many months.
So tell us what has the last few months been like at Netflix? And obviously, you're in a global HR role, so this has probably been a time where it's been really forcing you as a leader to test your mettle as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been um, up and down. I mean, it has been, crazy at first, sort of getting into the crisis management and what do we do? How do we prioritize? How do we support leaders? Figuring out how we get people out of our offices and get people to be working at home. How do we make sure that everybody is set up well at home? Those sorts of things initially. And then as has gone on, people are getting used to it, but yet we're dealing with burnout issues, with stress, with mental fatigue. And then obviously here in the US, and to that matter globally, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement as well, which has been another source of stress. There's, many of our colleagues have felt very traumatized by what's happening. On the positive side, we've seen lots of movement towards the causes that are important and much more focus on inclusion. We were very focused on it already, but it's certainly got lots more conversations going. So I think there's some real positives that have come out from that.
My understanding was you at Netflix had quite an office centric culture with beautiful spaces for people to collaborate. But now, of course, it's very different because everyone's in the virtual world. What has that transition been like?
Yeah, from a technology perspective, we were very well set up. So we didn't have to invest in any technology. All of our conversations took place over VC, largely connecting people from one office to another office rather than one person's home to another person's home. But there is a fundamental belief that collaboration is key and face-to-face collaboration is key. A big part of our sort of employee offering is really stunning colleagues in really stunning workplaces that are really immense fun to be in. And obviously all of that has gone away. Thankfully our culture is pretty strong, so our culture has maintained and allowed us to be productive, and we've realized that pretty much every role on the corporate side, obviously not on the sort of production side, but on the corporate side, every role can pretty much be done from home. And so whilst people are working very productively, we do want eventually to get back to some form of office space. Now, I'm sure over time that will be much more agile. And we had a very flexible working policy where people could work from anywhere. And we have, unlimited annual leave and unlimited parental leave and those sorts of things. And so we're very flexible as an employer, but I do think there will be more agility within that. But I think it's unlikely that we will go to like what some other tech companies have done, where it's okay, everybody can work from home, because we fundamentally believe that having people together and collaborating face to face is really healthy for our business and really healthy for our employees.
So building in that magic around people still feeling that culture or that impact of physically being together, but not physically being together, and recognizing that this period is undefined at the moment. What strategies have you put in place to keep that sort of that vibe high?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, and we just are doing lots and lots of different experiments with lots of different things. So we've have a really fantastic team effectiveness team that work with each of the leaders and our business partners, to really look at what's your team health, like, and how can we enhance it, and dig deep into sort of bespoke solutions for the team. So one of the approaches that I encourage my team not to take is a sort of a one hat fits all. So here's a module on leading virtually and everybody goes through it. Instead, we sort of figure out, well, what's the dynamic in a current team and what does that team need? And it may be, and we've done things that I 6 months ago would have said that will never work, but day-long virtual offsites. We've done things like happy hours. We've done things like dress as your favorite Netflix character for your team meeting. We've done home tours, kind of trying to inject a bit of fun into different team meetings, but really not having a one size fits all, sort of meeting each team where it's at. And constantly thinking about how do we continue through this. And that was great when we initially sort of went into lockdown. I think now we're transitioning from a sprint to a marathon, and really kind of figuring out how do we sustain this over the long term. And some of what I'm noticing is missing is literally just those corridor conversations, just the chit chat of, hey, I'm making a cup of tea and let's go for a quick walk together and exchange some ideas. And that's really difficult to kind of force in a synthetic environment. And so working through, my team play a really big role in coaching leaders and coaching all employees, really. And so encouraging each of them to find their own way of how do you do that with your colleagues. And then the other thing that we've really been focusing on is onboarding. So we're still hiring a lot of people, and probably adding, I don't know, another 15, 20% to our headcount this year. And joining an organization where you don't know anyone, you've never met anybody, including your boss, most likely face to face, you've never been to the physical office, and you may well currently be living in a different time zone, is hugely challenging. So we're doing lots of stuff about how do you kind of onboard somebody into an organization during this difficult time.
So do you think if you're an employee coming into Netflix now versus someone who's been there before, you're almost going to be sort of this generation two, sort of 2.0 type of person in the company with a complete different expectation of what it's like to exist and have a career?
Yes, I don't know if it's an expectation of what it's like, but I certainly think your lived experience is going to be different. And difference is okay. That's fine. But as long as it's as a pleasant experience, because I think, when people join an iconic brand like Netflix, there's an expectation that they walk in the door with. And normally we'd put you straight on a plane and fly you to LA and meet with hundreds of your colleagues in the Hollywood Palladium and go through what's called our new employee college. Clearly we can't do that anymore. So we're trying to recreate some of those experiences without losing the magic, so that people who join Netflix feel like they have, really joined this amazing company, and that they have the opportunity to build relationships in the same way that they would otherwise. We also spend a significant amount of time providing employers with the opportunity to build connections, whether that's at offsites or team building activities and things like that. And again, looking for ways in which we can recreate some of that so that that magic isn't lost.
I want to touch on one final area, and that is around calm and reducing anxiety and allowing people to focus to do their best work, but also being mindful of their broader responsibilities as humans and family members. How have you been working through that issue?
Good question. And I think that we are still working through it. So, I mean, initially when all of this started, we really doubled down on mental health. So we have, a corporate subscription to Headspace. So everybody has the Headspace app, both for them and their dependents. We did lots of seminars with counselors, with medical professionals. We have increased the amount of sort of therapist services that are available to people on the medical insurance that we provide. And then I think really some of the things that we've sort of tried to focus on as we've gone through is both connection and disconnection. So what we're finding is that people may take breaks or days off or so on, but it's really hard to disconnect because you're just at home and you can just jump on a call or you can just answer that email. And so really almost retraining people to how do I switch off in this new world? Because we're getting feedback like, well, my days are just really longer because I don't have my commute anymore to sort of bookend the day. And so again, sort of training people to disconnect, but then also training people to how do you remain connected in this sort of strange world. And the first time somebody suggested, let's do drinks over Zoom, I was like, yeah, that's going to be really rubbish. But actually now it's the new way that you have drinks with a colleague. So helping people work through some of those, I guess, sort of nervousness about what's new. And then longer term, looking at what does employee health mean? So, we're actually hiring for a director of employee health, and how do we keep people both physically and mentally healthy? And then, like I said earlier, on the working parents thing, we're still really figuring that out and looking at exploring options. Do we say no meetings Friday? So if it's a day where people can have a little bit more flexibility, do we look at giving people stipends to pay for tutors to help homeschool their children? Are there sort of different resources like tutoring organizations that we can build relationships with? And so right now we're really exploring that, if children are going to be off school for the next 6 months, how do we support our working parents? And I don't have any quick answers on that because we're still exploring options.